This is a May Luna Media production.
Hey, and welcome to Synaptic Soul, the podcast where science meets spirit, and we get real about the beautiful and brutal and magical mess of being human. I'm your host, Ava Marie Anderson, writer, mystic, multi-dimensional mischief maker. Quick disclaimer, you may hear the occasional snort, sigh, dramatic flop from my two French bulldogs, Rocky and Rambo. They're the soundtracks of my life, my soul companions, and honestly, the real stars of the show. Someday we'll dedicate a full episode to their role in my daily rituals, emotional healing, and wild spiritual life. But for now, just know that they're always close by, snoring their support. Let's dive in. Okay, bestie, let's get real for a second, because everybody's out here talking about the Great Awakening as if Gaia herself just set her iPhone alarm and decided to rise and shine with us in 2020. But let's be honest, Earth has been vibing since before we even crawled out of the primordial soup. Like, she didn't just suddenly wake up. What actually happened is that we finally started rubbing the crust out of our eyes after a few millennia of being, well, a little dense. Like headphones in, volume maxed out, ignoring every single sign dense. And think about it. For most of human history, we were deeply plugged in. Ancient cultures, indigenous traditions, shamans, mystics, they have always said that the earth is alive and conscious and communicative. The Lakota referred to the land as a relative. The Greeks had Gaia, the great Earth Mother, and the Yoruba traditions honor rivers and forests and stones as divine beings. This wasn't a question for them whether Earth was conscious, it was just reality. Like, they didn't separate spirit and science the way that we do in modern times. Like, they knew the cosmos breathed through everything. But then along came our Industrial Revolution hangover, like a few hundred years of logic only, spirit is silly, plus the side of capitalism convincing us that Earth is nothing more than resources to strip mine. Like, we paved paradise, we put up parking lots, and then we called it progress. And we got so addicted to our own tech and productivity that we forgot how to hear the hum of the earth beneath our feet. And you can say humanity collectively ghosted Gaia, like left her on red, which is brutal. And then boom, pandemic hits. The whole world is forced to stop. The distractions, the commutes, the endless grind, all on pause. And suddenly people are at home baking bread and growing houseplants and walking outside just to feel something again. And in that stillness, something wild happened. Like, we started hearing the whispers again. People started meditating and talking about synchronicities and noticing the bird song. Astrology exploded on TikTok. Plant medicine journeys went mainstream. The language of energy and frequency and vibration, all of that woo-woo stuff, started seeping into the mainstream. And it wasn't that Earth suddenly woke up, it was that we finally shut the fuck up long enough to notice. But here's the kicker. Science is now backing up what mystics have always said. Neuroscience shows meditation literally rewires your brain. And quantum physics shows that the universe is made up of energy fields and probabilities, not fixed little billiard balls of matter. And ecology shows us that trees literally communicate through underground fungal networks, aka the Wood Wide Web. Even NASA tracks the Schumann Resonance, which is the Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat, and then admits that it syncs with human brainwaves. So maybe we're not making this shit up. Like, maybe we were just too numbed out and caffeinated and doom-scrolled to notice until recently. And I like to think of it like this. Earth didn't suddenly start singing a new song. Like, she's always been humming and always vibrating and always sending her signals through her rivers and her winds and her storms and her animals. We just finally tuned that dial back to her frequency. For centuries, we have been on the wrong radio station. Static, commercials, ego noise. And now, finally, we're hitting scan and landing on Gaia FM. Like, the reception's still a little fuzzy at first, but once you hear it, you can't unhear it. So when people ask, is Earth waking up with us? Maybe the real question is, did she ever go to sleep? Or are we, the teenagers, stumbling out of our blackout, finally realizing that mom's been up making breakfast the whole time, waiting for us to come back to the damn table? And here's the paradox that sets the stage for this whole conversation. Maybe the Earth is evolving and shifting frequencies and recalibrating in ways that we've never experienced in human memory. Or maybe she's always been awake and pulsing with intelligence, and we're just finally sober enough or desperate enough to notice. But either way, one thing is for sure. The human awakening is not happening in isolation. We are cells in a much bigger body, and when we stir, the whole organism stirs with us. All right, let's talk about Gaia's body, because if Earth is a living organism, which indigenous traditions and mystics and even a few bold scientists have been saying forever, then she's got to have a nervous system, right? Like something that keeps her rhythms pulsing and her systems talking and her whole being humming in harmony. And spoiler alert, she does. This is called the Schumann Resonance. It's the electromagnetic heartbeat of the Earth. And now here's the wild part. The Schumann resonance vibrates at about 7.83 hertz, which just so happens to be the same frequency range as human alpha brainwaves. So translation, our brains are literally wired to sync with the Earth's frequency. When we're calm and meditative and creative, we're basically when we're not doom scrolling Instagram at 2 a.m., our brain waves drop into alpha and boom, we are vibing with Gaia's heartbeat. We're not separate from her. We are biologically tuned to her signal. Like, that's a science mic drop, but it gets juicier. Over the past few decades, researchers have noticed spikes in the Schumann resonance, like sudden bursts of fluctuations and waves. And often, those spikes coincide with big global events, like mass meditations or solar flares, and even collective crises. And some folks interpret it like this. Gaia's nervous system is reacting and recalibrating just like ours does when we're stressed or when we're healing. It's almost like Earth herself is pulsing harder, shaking herself awake and saying, hey babies, like it is time to rise. And mystics, of course, have been nodding along like, yeah, welcome to the party. And indigenous traditions have always taught that Earth breathes and pulses and communicates. The difference is that now we've got satellites and NASA charts to confirm it. It's finally giving catching up to grandma's medicine stories vibes. So here's another layer. It's called the Gaia hypothesis, and it was introduced by James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis in the 1970s, of course. They propose that the Earth is a self-regulating organism. She maintains her own temperature and atmosphere and biosphere the way that your body maintains homeostasis. So when you spike a fever, your immune system is kicking in to fight something off. And when Earth heats up or storms or shifts, could that potentially be Gaia's version of a fever? Like maybe a shadow purge or her own dark night of the soul? But this is where the paradox kicks in again. Climate change, extreme weather, ocean die-offs. Science frames these as symptoms of human damage, which is true. But if we zoom out, could they also be signs of a deeper awakening process, like a planetary detox? Gaia recalibrating her body, even if it looks chaotic to us. Like, just like our own spiritual awakenings, hers might involve earthquakes and storms and a lot of messy release before balance returns. But let's not forget the human connection here. Our nervous systems are linked to hers. When the Schumann spikes, humans often report anxiety and insomnia and vivid dreams or even spontaneous downloads of intuition. And if that sounds familiar, it's not woo. That is resonance. Your body is an antenna, and the Earth's nervous system is the signal. And if she's shifting, you are going to feel it, which means whether she's waking up or we're just tuning in, we're all in it together. And this is why meditation and grounding and barefoot walks and literally hugging trees, they're not just crunchy hippie rituals. They're ways of syncing your personal nervous system back into Gaia's field. And science shows us heart coherence, which is basically when your heart and your brain sync up. It stabilizes not only your health, but it also interacts with the electromagnetic fields around you. So imagine millions of humans regulating with the earth like a global nervous system hack. That is collective awakening in action. So when people say the earth feels off lately, they are not wrong. Gaia's nervous system is sparking and recalibrating and pulsing at new intensities. And we're not separate observers of that shift, we are the participants. Every time your nervous system heals and grounds or awakens, you're like one neuron firing in the earth's great cosmic brain. So here's the takeaway. The Schumann Resonance is like Gaia's group text. She has been pinging us nonstop, and for centuries we have had our phones on silent. But now, with these spikes and surges, it's like she's turned on the emergency bypass, so the message finally comes through. And we can't ignore it anymore. But the question is, do we treat it like spam, or do we finally answer the fucking call? This episode is brought to you in part by one of my most favorite humans on this spinning planet, Morgan Garza, and her book Soul Magic. If you've ever felt like your power was just waiting beneath the surface, or like there's something ancient and electric inside of you ready to be reclaimed, then this is the book that helps you remember. Soul Magic is not just a read, it is a summoning. It's filled with rituals and stories and the kind of grounded spiritual wisdom that doesn't talk at you, it talks with you. Morgan writes like a soul sister, a cosmic cheerleader, and a priestess all rolled into one. And it's a must-have for anyone on the path of awakening, reclaiming. So grab your copy at morgangarza.com or wherever books are sold, or bless someone else's journey and gift it. Because real magic's meant to be shared. That's Soul Magic by Morgan Garza. You'll feel it in your bones. Okay, so let's get into the tea on plants. If humans are the chatty teenagers of Earth's ecosystem, plants are the ancient grandmothers sitting quietly in the corner waiting on you to finally shut up long enough to realize that they have been whispering wisdom the entire time. And the whispers are no metaphor. Science now shows that plants literally communicate. Like, enter the mycelial network, the wood wide web. Beneath the forest floor, fungal threads connect tree roots in an intricate network. And through these underground highways, trees send nutrients and water and warnings, and even what kind of looks like love notes to each other. Like a dying tree might pump its remaining resources into a sapling, and a mother tree will send chemical signals to warn her babies about droughts or pests. And if that is not conscious, intelligent behavior, then what the fuck is? But here's the kicker. Science resisted this for years because it sounded too woo. But the data keeps stacking. Suzanne Simard, the forest ecologist who pioneered this research, proved that forests operate less like competitive markets and more like family systems. Cooperation, not just survival of the fittest. Like, sounds a lot like the spiritual teachings we've been hearing for millennia. Everything is interconnected. No one thrives in isolation, and love is literally nourishment. And now let's layer in the quantum. Photosynthesis, that everyday miracle where plants turn sunlight into sugar, it doesn't actually work by the clunky step-by-step mechanism scientists once assumed. Like, no. It runs on quantum tunneling. Electrons in plant cells move through multiple potential pathways at once, in superposition, and choose the most efficient route. So, in plain language, plants are doing quantum-level wizardry every fucking second just to feed themselves. They have been quantum jumping since before we even had the language for it. And this is where science and spirituality kiss. Mystics have always said plants are intelligent beings carrying consciousness and healing codes. And shamans listen to the songs of plants during ayahuasca ceremonies. And herbalists speak of plants as teachers, not as tools. And now quantum biology is backing all of that up. Plants are not passive scenery. They are active participants in a symphony of consciousness. So, what does it mean if the Earth is awakening? Well, it might look like plants turning up the volume on their communications, calling us back into relationship. Like, why do you think houseplants have become the obsession of millennials and Gen Z? It is not just aesthetics. Like, there's something in our nervous systems craving reconnection to green life. And the global surge in interest in plant medicine, like mushrooms, cacao, ayahuasca, cannabis, that is another sign. Like, these aren't new fads. These are ancient allies rising up again and saying, hey, humans, you remember us? We've been holding the codes for your healing this entire time. And let's not ignore the synchronicities. Like, how many times have you been in a moment of emotional upheaval and suddenly a hawk flies overhead, or a rose bush blooms at your doorstep, or just a random feather shows up? Like, nature talks. It always has. The difference now is that more people are finally paying attention. It's not that plants suddenly got chatty in 2020. It's that we pulled the earbuds out of our collective psyche. And here's that paradox again. Is this plants waking up with us, or is it us finally noticing because they were awake the entire time? And maybe it's both. Because here's the thing, just as much as we influence them, like hello climate change and deforestation, like they influence us. Their oxygen becomes our breath. Their medicine becomes our healing, and their energy fields literally shift our physiology, and studies show simply being in a forest lowers cortisol and blood pressure and anxiety. Like, plants don't just heal us, they recalibrate us back into Gaia's nervous system. And if you zoom out, it's almost like plants are the translators between Earth and humanity. They speak in chemical and electromagnetic and quantum frequencies, and if we're open enough, our bodies decode the message. Like, the rise of plant consciousness in our collective psyche is not random. It's the earth nudging us through her green ambassadors saying, come back into the circle. We can't awaken apart. We do this together. So whether we call it global spiritual awakening or just a scientific revelation, the message is clear. Plants aren't background decor. They're co-conspirators in this planetary evolution, and they've been quantum as hell from the beginning. We are the late bloomers finally showing up to the garden party. All right, let's talk about the other members of Earth's squad, the animals. So if humans are the loud, messy teenagers and plants are the wise grandmothers, animals are like our siblings. They're always tuned in and always feeling the vibes and usually 10 steps ahead of us. They've been awake this whole time, operating with senses that we barely understand, while we're still fumbling with Google Maps and trying to manifest parking spaces. But here's the truth. Animals are deeply psychic. And science might dress it up in fancier language, but the data is there. Birds navigate thousands of miles using magnetic fields. Whales and dolphins communicate across entire oceans through frequencies that we can't even hear. Elephants sense thunderstorms and droughts hundreds of miles away. And don't even get me started on cats, who clearly see things in your living room that you don't want to. These aren't anomalies. This is baseline animal intuition. Now, what happens when Gaia herself is shifting? Well, the animals start signaling it. There are countless stories of animals acting strangely before earthquakes and tsunamis or storms. Dogs barking, birds taking off, cows bolting uphill, long before human instruments register a thing. In Sri Lanka during the 2004 tsunami, elephants broke free of their chains and ran inland hours before the waves hit. Like, 0 elephants died. Meanwhile, humans were still building sandcastles, and that's not instinct. That is energetic attunement. They feel Earth's nervous system like a second skin. And since 2020, researchers and regular folks alike have noticed animals behaving differently. Like, whales are approaching boats instead of avoiding them. Foxes are wandering city streets in broad daylight, and birds are altering migration patterns. Like, are these just survival responses to climate change? Sure. But from a mystical lens, they're also signals. The animal kingdom is moving closer to us, trying to remind us of a lost intimacy. It's like they're knocking on the glass saying, hey, like, remember, we're all a part of the same dream. And let's not forget the ancestral and spiritual traditions that have always seen animals as messengers. So, from Native American totems to Egyptian deities, from Celtic animal guides to Hindu sacred cows, animals have been revered as teachers and protectors and spiritual allies. Like a raven doesn't just show up, it is a message. A snake doesn't just cross your path, it is an initiation. And in a world where more and more people are reporting synchronicities and animal encounters, maybe it's not random. Maybe it's Gaia's way of speaking through her creatures. And then here's the paradox again. Are animals awakening with us, or are we finally noticing their signals after centuries of pretending that we were superior? Because let's be honest, humans have had a superiority complex forever. Like, we thought that language made us special, but whales compose symphonies. And we thought that tools were our flex, but crows make them too. And we thought culture was uniquely human, but dolphins literally have names for each other and they pass down traditions. The only ones asleep at the wheel have been us. So, if Earth is having a spiritual awakening, the animals are either her early responders or her translators. They're showing us how to sense beyond logic, how to move with instinct, and how to trust the invisible. Like, watching an animal is like getting a masterclass in embodiment and intuition. Like, your cat doesn't meditate. Like, she is meditation. And your horse doesn't read self-help books about authenticity. He just lives it. And animals are walking and flying and swimming reminders of the consciousness that we forgot we had. And on a quantum level, this tracks. Biologists studying animal navigation suspect quantum entanglement might explain how birds sense magnetic fields. And migratory patterns suggest that animals are literally plugged into the fabric of Earth's field. So in other words, they are the antennas of Gaia's body, tuned to frequencies that we are only beginning to rediscover. And if the planet is shifting, you bet your ass the animals are going to feel it first. So, what does animal participation in this awakening look like? It's the fox crossing your path on a day that you're making a big decision, or the whales changing their migration to come closer to human shorelines. It's the increase of animal-human encounters, not as accidents, but as invitations. Like, Gaia might not speak English, but she is fluent in animal, and her creatures are carrying the message. Like, wake up. You belong. You are not separate. And here's the bottom line. Animals don't need to awaken. They already are. The real awakening is us realizing that we are not the only conscious ones on the playground. They have been speaking to Gaia all along, and we're finally just now eavesdropping on the conversation. This episode is supported in part by Saged app, aka the app that's basically a metaphysical multivitamin. It's like having a spiritual sanctuary in your pocket minus the incense smoke in your purse. It's also where I host my new moon manifestation clubs, which, if you know, we go deep. So if you're ready to stop doom scrolling and start soul scrolling, download Sage in the App Store or Google Play and then step into a more intentional, magical version of your day. That's SAGED, like Sage, but with an app. Back to the episode. Here's the million-dollar question. If Earth is in the middle of a spiritual awakening, how would we even know? Like, what are the symptoms when a planet starts shifting frequencies? Spoiler, it is messy, just like when we humans awaken. But let's just start with the obvious one, which is climate chaos. Hurricanes and wildfires and floods and heat waves. It feels like Earth has been throwing temper tantrums lately. And from a purely scientific perspective, this is climate change driven by human behavior. But through a mystical lens, it also looks eerily like shadow work. Like, you know how during your own awakening, all that repressed shit that you'd been avoiding comes bursting to the surface? That is what Gaia looks like right now. It's old energy and imbalance and trauma bubbling up in extreme weather events. And is it destructive? Abso-fucking-lutely. But destruction and creation are dance partners. Sometimes things have to break down before they can evolve. And the next symptom is timing shifts in nature, like plants blooming out of season, birds migrating earlier or later, and animals changing their routes. And from an ecological standpoint, this is Earth adapting to altered temperature. But from a spiritual standpoint, it's Earth recalibrating her clock. So if she's evolving into a new vibration, the old timing structures can't hold. And think of it like the planet's circadian rhythm adjusting. Like she's jet lagged, but in a cosmic sense. And then there's the surge of animal-human encounters, whales approaching boats, coyotes trotting through urban neighborhoods, and hawks circling when you're having a breakthrough. And sure, some of this is displacement from shrinking habitat, but at the same time, it feels like Earth is using her creatures as messengers, breaking down the barriers between the wild and the civilized. And if the awakening is about oneness, of course the animals would start closing the distance. Another major symptom is the rise of plant medicine and nature reconnection. Like, think of it like this. Ayahuasca retreats and mushroom ceremonies and cacao circles, these aren't coincidences. They're part of a larger movement of humans being called back into right relationship with Gaia's pharmacopoeia. It's almost like Earth herself is saying, hey kids, you're lost, take this, it'll help you remember. And let's not ignore the explosion of houseplant culture and gardening obsessions and forest bathing trends. Science says that nature immersion heals the nervous system, and spirit says that nature is calling us back into dialogue. Either way, though, the result is the same, and it's reconnection. But here's a subtler one, like synchronicities in nature. Like you're meditating on transformation and then a butterfly lands on your windowsill. Or you're grieving and suddenly you hear the call of a raven. Or you're calling in sweetness and then bees show up. Skeptics will say it's chance, but if you're tuned in, you know that the Earth speaks through signs. A planetary awakening looks like the veil between the mundane and the sacred is growing thinner until every bird call or gust of wind feels like part of the conversation. And now let's talk about what this looks like in us, because if we are cells in Gaia's body, her awakening will mirror in our nervous systems. Like people are reporting insomnia and anxiety and vivid dreams and random surges of energy and spontaneous downloads. These aren't just personal quirks. They may be Earth-level pulses moving through us. Our bodies are antennas, and if Gaia's frequency is shifting, of fucking course we are going to buzz. But here's the paradox, bestie. Some of what we call a crisis might actually be initiation. Like just like your personal awakening might have started with a breakup or a burnout or an illness, Gaia's awakening might look like collapse before rebirth. And it's uncomfortable, yes, and it is terrifying at times, but it's also necessary. And this is how systems evolve. And the real invitation is not to run from the symptoms, but to learn to interpret them. Like, what if we stopped seeing storms as punishments and started seeing them as detoxes? Like, what if we read animal encounters as teachings instead of anomalies? And what if we treated climate chaos as a wake-up call to remember that we are the participants, not just the bystanders in this Earth's journey? So, what does a planetary awakening look like? Well, it looks like chaos and beauty interwoven. It looks like destruction paired with rebirth. It looks like science finally catching up to mysticism. And it looks like plants and animals and humans and Earth herself all pulsing in one messy, magnificent feedback loop of just full-on fucking evolution. And the paradox stands. Maybe Gaia is awakening with us. Maybe she's always been awakened. Maybe we're just noticing. But either way, the symptoms are here. And the medicine is this: to pay attention, to listen, to participate consciously in the shift instead of numbing out. Because if Earth is going through her dark night of the soul, bestie, we are all in therapy with her. If you loved this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a glowing review. It helps more beautiful souls like you find this space. Because your words matter, your energy ripples, and every review is like a little spell of support for the Synaptic Soul mission. So until next time, stay curious, stay cosmic, and keep waking the F up.